We're going to move on to our first panel, ladies and gentlemen, where we're going to hear from the players that are at the deep end in Africa. We have a separate panel, I believe, tomorrow to talk to the international MTOs. But really, this is very much focused on what's happening in Africa. So I think the way we're going to do it is we can just start from here. I won't introduce everyone because you can read about them and I probably won't do justice. So if you can just introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your company, and we'll just go down this way and then we'll go through Q&A. So I don't think anybody has any presentations on this, I'm just stick it. So great.
Thank you, Mohit, and good day to everyone. I'm Sejal Magan. I'm the executive head of Hello Pesa, a proudly South African Adler licensed remittance company, currently remitting to just over 30 countries out of South Africa. So it's a person-to-person service. But let me go back a little bit in history, and I won't take much of your time. Hello Pesa is part of the Hello Group, and we started off with a company called Hello Mobile. Hello Mobile is an MVNO and specializes in low-cost international calling. We then found that there was a tremendous amount of migrants living in South Africa and went back to them, our customer, to find out what did they need next. And they needed a way to send their money home. And so the birth of Hello Pesa. And now Hello Pesa offers them this way to send their money home.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Diggle Bennett, and I'm the Group CFO of Mercury. For those of you who are not familiar with Mercury, we're an African company that is focused on formalizing the informal remittance space. We're concentrated primarily on the needs of migrant workers in Africa and the UK. If you're out later tonight in your Uber or at a restaurant, have a chat to your driver or your waiter. Chances are that they're a migrant worker living in South Africa and that they use Mercury to send money back to their loved ones. We've been operational for the last 15 years, and in that time sent over 25 million transactions. In the last couple of years, primarily since 2011, we've seen some exponential growth, and we're rapidly expanding across Africa. We now have at least 10 entities within the Southern African bar. In terms of volume sent, we're the largest IMTO in the SADC region. I thought I would share 6 things that we've learned over the last couple of years. One size definitely doesn't fit all. What's worked for us in Zambia doesn't necessarily work for us in Mozambique. I think local knowledge is premium, and where we can, we set up our own vertical in our own countries. That enables us to use knowledge on the ground, relationships, and just understand the culture of people who are sending money back. Connectivity and backup redundancy are critical. A recent example was when Zimbabwe decided to turn off the internet. Not something you can easily plan for, but something that we managed to work around and still make sure that our customers could get their money on the other end. Financial literacy differs significantly across the world, but especially across Africa. And you have to then make sure that you market and communicate to your customer accordingly. Creating trust is key, and I think this is especially apparent in a migrant community. We've seen that especially in countries like DRC, Mozambique, in South Africa, whereas one is financial literacy, there's a language barrier and trust, and that's a hard one for them to gauge. And I think finally, it's great having cool tech, but as Michael said earlier, there is no substitute for sweating the hard yards. Thanks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Didi Efuyebashi. I'm the category business manager for ZPay Ghana. ZPay is a wholly owned Ghanaian company based in Ghana with an FCA license in the UK, a license to do remittances from the UK into any part of the world, pretty much. ZPay is a company that started 5 years ago. We turned 5 years on the 14th of January, so we're excited to be 5 years. Just emerging out of the startup zone. typically we run on two models. We do mobile money. On the Ghana front, we have our own standalone wallet in Ghana, and one of our flagship projects will be the Digital for Inclusion. We're very big on financial inclusion in Ghana, so we have a project that is supported by the government and focuses on reaching the rural areas, reaching them and enabling financial inclusion that way. The other thing that we do, the other model that we run is remittances, digital termination of remittances. So typically we would partner with the likes of MoneyGram, Small World, and any other money transfer operator, traditional money transfer operators that would want to partner with us, and we will terminate onto our digital rails, i.e. mobile money, bank, digital via cash via digital tokens. Those are things that we do at the moment, and I must say that we're happy to be here, so thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kabiru Boj. I'm the CEO of Wari. I would call Wari the anti-M-Pesa because we have M-Pesa on the east side of Africa. We have on the west side, we have proven that there's another way of organizing the payment economy because we have an agnostic platform. Today we are in 46 countries in Africa. We are in 12 countries in Europe. We just bought a bank in France with a passport in 27 countries, license in UK. We have a payment platform license in UAE, Dubai. We just acquired a license in the US for payment service provider and cryptocurrency. We're just being listed on the OTC and on our way to NASDAQ. We have more than 212 million people using a platform, 8 million accounts, more than 6 billion euro daily, yearly transaction. That's basically just to tell you what we're doing. And service goes from remittance, local, international. We have thousands of partners plugged to our platform, 172 banks partners, and we do basics with bill payment, utilities, we collect tax, we pay salaries, we pay pensions, scholarship, etc., etc. So just to, and now we're moving to cryptocurrency. You know, the underline of wire transaction is done by cryptocurrency. We have started a partnership with the Central Bank of West Africa, where we give a platform to the central bank. The central bank issues the cryptocurrency, gives it to us, and then we play with that currency within our transaction. And I think it's the future of the economy, and we'll talk later about the fact how we can put ourselves together to leverage on what we're doing.
Maybe you should have told us what you don't do.
Hello, my name is Dario Guju. I'm the founder and CEO of MFS Africa, and we are on a journey to achieve a simple vision, which is to get the world to take mobile payment for granted. We all now take it for granted that when we pick up our phone, we can always call a number on the other side of the world. We exist to make the same true for money. And we are well on our way to make that true in Africa, in many parts of Africa now. Mobile money customers can send money to each other through our platform. We connect to M-Pesa, MTN, Orange, and so on. And in the last 3 years, we have started expanding the horizon. Hello? Yeah. So in the last few years, we have started expanding that pool, and we have started to learn more about the money transfer industry. And IMTN has been a big part of that journey for us. And we work now with many of the people in the room, but in a nutshell, that's what we're trying to do.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for that introduction. And please start to get your questions ready, but I'll kick it off. So we heard about mobile money from Michael. I'm sort of curious to hear from each one of you as to, in your business, where do you see that? Is it a significant part of your business? Do you see it trending that way? And also in particular, how important is cash still in what you do? And then we'll come on to you, Leslie, because I know you're a big fan of mobile money given MFS, so you can tell us the counter side of it. So maybe you can kick us off.
Yes, we have seen definite uptake thanks to organizations like M-Pesa in certain corridors, but cash is still king in Africa. We definitely support the movement to mobile money because it simply just makes it that much safer for our beneficiary in country to receive that money. But we also in the same breath still face many barriers or factors which hamper that. And if I may mention a few on behalf of my fellow panelists up here as well, I'm sure they share the same sentiment. But pricing is a big thing. We're dealing with, our customers are poor, and as Michael alluded to as well, that last $10 or $20 may be the last $20 they ever have. So if mobile money operators are willing to look at a direct partnership with organizations like Mukuru and ourselves, this would aid in driving that price down, because currently we all use aggregators to get to access to these mobile wallets, and it would be so much more efficient if we went direct. Also, another thing that hampers that growth and migration to mobile money is in the send country. It depends on what the network and the reach of that mobile money operators has. I mean, can you only pay electricity, or can you pay for a number of other services or other requirements that you may have daily? And most of the time, if our customer or the end user needed to walk to a grocery store and buy his daily necessities, he would still need cash. And again, we could then look at the cost of cash out. So if we could drive those costs of cash out further down, we may also have a better uptake in it. But yes, there is a trend towards it. We constantly promote it. But again, where there's issues such as distribution network issues or liquidity issues, Pesa has even gone as far as putting our own outlets in certain countries. We've got outlets in Malawi, we've got outlets in Zimbabwe. We've actually gone and started operations there because of these problems.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I kind of echo exactly my colleague's sentiments there. At the moment, I believe we're in a transitional stage. However, cash is still very much king for our customers. If I look at Mukuru, our predominant customers are Malawians, Zimbabweans, Mozambicans, Lesotho, Zambians, Swanas, majority living in South Africa, sending back to their families. We have relationships with mobile partners in majority of those countries, but we haven't seen the uptake yet. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One is there's an educational element that still needs to take place. Customers are used to cash. The majority of our customers are sending money back to their families and predominantly their parents. So my folks are late 60s, 70s. The whole idea of mobile wallet is kind of new to them, for example. So there's an education piece that we need to overcome. The pricing element, I'm really glad you touched on it. It's one that we hear quite often, that we should not get our pricing lower and lower. Our most expensive payout partner in our entire network is a mobile wallet that we actually have a direct bind with as well. So there's no third-party aggregator. It is literally, they are the most expensive. So there are those barriers to ones. Do I believe that we're going to get them in the next 3 to 5 years? Absolutely. I do think that's the way the market is trending, and I think that's great. It makes it much less frictionless for our customers. They don't have to worry about going and picking up the cash. You talked about the security issues earlier. There are questions about liquidity and what you can actually do with that mobile wallet. Some players are obviously bigger than others. EcoCash in Zimbabwe has managed to dominate the market. That's come across through two ways. One is they are interoperable. You can literally go and pay for your tomatoes by the side of the road to pay for your school fees. They've also managed to balance SD. Zimbabwe has a huge liquidity crisis, as I'm sure you're all aware of, and by default, when there's no money in the economy, you start defaulting to digital or to mobile wallet money. So they've done a phenomenal job there. Yeah, I think it's very exciting times. We are very keen to see how we can have more direct funds, to your point earlier, until I think the aggregators do take a middle cut. And once we can start driving that price down for the customers on the other side as well, that just makes a more appealing product in total. Thanks.
Okay, so for me, cash is definitely king, but I would say that it is a function of the send side or the sender, because the sender or the typical immigrant is very conventional in their ways. Not so much because they choose to, but really because they don't have a choice. He's an immigrant, look at a typical immigrant, for instance, who's not properly integrated into the financial ecosystem or wherever they exist or wherever they're working. At the end of the day, they don't have a choice. All they know is what they've been doing. Now, just as has been said, if we're able to educate these people and let them understand that there's an option there's a digital option of now sending the money, because guess what? In Africa, mobile money has become a big thing and it has become a thing to stay. More and more people, for Ghana for instance, more and more people have mobile wallets, more and more people are doing payments, P2P, and even paying for simple things such as medical bills, school fees, day-to-day amenities are being paid through mobile money in Ghana. So if the immigrant is aware that there's that option, then they're going to use it. Also, if the recipient, last mile, is aware that that option is available to his sender, then he's going to now tell the sender, please send me money through mobile money, because now it is easier, it's convenient for me to cash out. It's convenient also for me to use the mobile money to do my payments, because guess what, that's what I'm doing anyway. So things don't change for me, and I have full control of the money that you send to me. The other thing that I think about is the fact that mobile money has its negative side, which is a cash fraud. When you talk about cash, you have the incident of people, or the traditional cash that we're all used to. People taking an IMT code, going or taking an IMT code that does not belong to them, which is something that exists, and then going behind the original beneficiary and cashing out money that does not belong to them. And it's a prevalent thing, something that exists. Now, how are we going to go beyond that? How are we going to circumvent that issue? How are we going to solve that problem? If you use a digital rail, if you use a digital token, for instance, then the person is forced to go to an agent with that token and then redeem. At that point, it is no more a traditional IMT code that another person can access. But because it's an IMT code that is coming directly onto his mobile asset, his mobile phone, he picks that immediately and then goes to the agent and receives the money. So that cash issue, that traditional cash issue is circumvented. So for me, I think that yes, digital will be the solution to cash. And cash is still king. People are still going to use cash, but then how are we going to make cash better for beneficiaries?
This one work? Okay. We have a certain problem with when I heard mobile money, because, like I said, and the gentleman was mentioning before, you have the World Bank and CGAP and the Gates Foundation coming from elsewhere telling us about mobile money is the future of payment in Africa, blah, 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 blah. I don't believe in mobile money as a future, as I don't believe in telcos as a future, because telco license and the brand of a telco doesn't exist, it's not relevant outside the border, outside your license. If you take Orange here, doesn't mean anything. You take Vodafone and you take it to Mali, or you take it to Gambia, doesn't mean anything. And if you see all of you around in this room, all your kids, even you, when you go to a place, you say, what is a Wi-Fi? You don't say what is Vodafone, or what is Orange, or what is MTN. So all of the telcos are going to disappear. That's why they're trying to move from one side to another. And they are pushing and leveraging on those World Bank and CGAP, etc., on the mobile money. Mobile money is just a tube. Behind there's a platform. There's a real industry and a technology and a system. And those layers has to be put in places. If you take the rest of the world, except China, and you paint it in gray, and you leave the logo Visa and MasterCard in color, you will see that every single person is connected. From your pocket, to the mom and pop shop, to the pharmacy, to the shop, etc. It's about digitalization. The success is M-Pesa, and it's only a success in Kenya and in around Tanzania, Uganda, is because Kenya has been digitalized. We're talking about cash, is another aspect. But the taxi is connected, the gas station is connected, the pharmacy connected, everybody's connected in Kenya. They all digitalized. They have digitalized. It's been done by defeat with Safaricom, but it's a matter of, like you were saying, people believe with passion, believing in what they were doing, and they transform the whole country into a digitalized country. The future of our business is to digitalize our economies. And we have to first put the layers together. Today, nobody is challenging, no bank in the world, you have thousands of them, no one has his own private cards. They all use Visa or MasterCard. It's a standard. We need to have a standard. We have a standard in issuing the payment means. There has to be agnostic. We need to have a standard in KYC. Some people were mentioning it. So we can just tap into one platform to KYC, whoever wants KYC. People that are expert in KYC should put their expertise in that, etc., etc. The future of economy comes from a standardization of things, a complementarity of our action. We cannot recreate everything. Everybody is competing against everybody. That's why we have removed Western Union from Western Africa. It went from dominant to almost zero transaction. If you go from Senegal to Ivory Coast, to Mali, to Gambia, to Mauritania, Chad, you don't see Western Union anymore. We have divided the price from 50 times from their pricing to the pricing that we offer them. The low pricing comes from competition. But having the telco in between, it creates a huge problem because it creates a problem of monopoly. I agree with what Malisek was saying about Microsoft. If there were Microsoft, if there were no antitrust system in the US, there wouldn't be no Apple and Google's, etc., etc. You cannot have a company that runs a public service, which is a telecom. If I put $10 billion on the table, I cannot be a telco operator in South Africa, neither in other country in the world. But if I put $1 billion on the table and I go by the regulation, but central bank, I can be a bank. So there's a distortion there, and people have to think about that. We are giving them a tube for free, and everybody is saying, oh, the future is mobile money, and of course, they're happy to hear that. So people have to think about it. We have to combine our efforts. We have to talk to the regulator and have the telco being just a single player, a tube like the others, opening the truth to everybody. Today, if you go to port from Kenya, which is again an exception, you go to countries, you cannot have access to USSD, so you cannot have access to the small guys with feature phones. You go for SMS, they will charge you over prices for having access to SMS, etc., etc. If you don't have a regulator that is aware of the problematic of how to organize a competitive market, it will be impossible for all our economy to survive.
Okay. No, give us the other side.
Well, you know, whenever I see Kabir on stage, I know it's going to be colorful. And today is always disappointing. There's a lot to talk about here, but maybe I'll leave it. I think, first of all, you have to take a step back, and I think it's a question of objective/vision. It's a question of perspective, and it's a question of time horizon. So, and I will use the analogy of the telecom industry. There was a time, I'm not that old, but I know that time, you couldn't send SMS across network. But it will not come to anybody's mind now that it won't work. So what happened? Why did it change? It changed when the time was right, and it changed for efficiency through some sort of hub or switch, whatever you want to call it. Same thing for the call. It won't come to the mind of Vodacom or Orange or Idea, anyone that, if you launch a new mobile network today, it won't come to your mind that you're not going to connect to the 300 and something network that are out there. It just doesn't make sense. And actually, if you were to do that, you will price yourself out of the market. So that is the time, the perspective, and the time horizon that I wanted to talk about a little bit from my colleague here to say, yes, from a narrow perspective, you can see that aggregators are adding to the price. But if you think about the industry as a whole, that is actually the most efficient way to connect the world. Because the point-to-point connections grow like exponential. We all know that's worth. Whereas a one connection grows just linearly. Right? So if you take a perspective of my business today as a money transfer operator in the next 3 years, you probably will not pay a premium. I agree. But if you take a perspective of, which is certainly our perspective, create pathways between two phone numbers. So the same way we take it for granted that we can call, we want the world to take it for granted that we can send money. We believe, and this does not have to be MFS, of course, we're doing everything so that it is MFS. But we believe it's more efficient for the entire world that an aggregator plays there, from that perspective. So there is a debate about cash. And I actually think that last time I heard, cash is still growing in Europe. It's not like people are printing less cash today in the developed market. And I'll use the SMS example again. There was a time people thought SMS was dead, right? Satellite was dead when we were putting fibers across the Atlantic. Both kept growing. SMS is still growing. I think we have to reckon with the fact that some of these things, it sounds nice when we say cash is the enemy and so on and so forth. I actually think we should frame the problem differently. People should have the choice. If they choose to use cash for whatever reason, who are we to challenge that? But what we do, the part we do, we must do it well. We need to give people choice, and the choice that they take, we should be able to fulfill it. Or we could choose to fulfill only one part of that equation. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think if we define the problem as the cash being the enemy, we are setting ourselves for failure from the beginning. Because even in those developed economies that we will tend to benchmark the developing world too, cash is growing. And there are various reasons why that is true. So I don't necessarily want us or the industry here to pitch the debate that we must eliminate cash. Cash is expensive. And if you choose to do cash, you need to be efficient in doing cash. But it's okay to do cash, because some people out there want cash. And the last thing I want to put is also like, it goes back to the perspective a little bit what Gabriel was talking about. what is the role of the mobile networks? Who are mainly our partners. Our business started really connecting mobile money players to each other to enable interoperability. So you can send money from MTN in Cote d'Ivoire to Airtel in Nigeria. You can send money from M-Pesa in Kenya to Airtel in Tanzania and so on. Or to Wally, yes, actually, Cameroon is one of our big ones. Or to Wally, and vice versa. So I think we have to give credit where it deserves. I think what mobile network has done, what mobile money has done, is to bring customers to the digital age. And again, if you listen to what Michael said earlier and what usually I say, mobile money is not about the mobile. It's about the agents. The real engine behind it is the 2 million cash-in, cash-out outlets in sub-Saharan Africa today, which if you compare to all Western Union for 100 years, or all bank branches together and so on, and we're just talking about sub-Saharan Africa. So that is the infrastructure that mobile money has contributed to the money transfer industry. So if you look at it at mobile money, yes, the money goes onto the wallet. But the real reason, the real thing that makes it work is you actually have access to 2 million agents. That is much bigger than all of you in this room put together. So I think for me, that's really where we can debate at the market level, whether Safaricom is to do it in Kenya or in Cote d'Ivoire and so on. So probably valid debate to have. But if you extract yourself and look at, okay, how do I move money? Because it will be an ill-pitched debate for me or fight to look at mobile money as something that is telco-led and therefore the telco and therefore we couldn't touch them and so on. And look beyond that and look at the agents that are the real engine, which we know eventually that's where the customer interaction eventually happens. So just to sum it up and say, perspective, time horizon, and objective. And if you look at it from that point of view, I think mobile money is definitely going to transform eventually, and it's going to take a big chunk of money transfer into Africa and within Africa, but I also don't think it will displace cash.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We're going to open it up to questions. Come on, coffee must have kicked it by now. Okay, I always have lots of questions, so let me, so the gentleman there touched on de-risking, something as some of you have heard me speak very passionately about. I think we've lost all perspective, things are going berserk. I mean, and IMTN is constantly engaging with FSB, with World Bank, with FATF, with regulators to sort of bring perspective to it. And I'll just open it up, it doesn't have to be everybody that has to answer, but I'm very sort of curious to understand, are you facing that here in Africa? If you are, can you share, and you don't have to talk about specific facts, but can you share, more importantly, what have you done, to counteract that? Because people here would quite like to learn what they could take away from it, from your example. So I'll just open it up to whoever wants to start in terms of what your experience has been with de-risking here in Africa with the banks.
As I mentioned earlier, one of our key corridors is the South Africa to Zimbabwe market. Zim has changed currencies a number of times over the last 20 years. It's currently predominantly US dollars and what we call RTGS. One of the big headaches we've faced over the last 5-6 years specifically is, as sanctions have got tighter on Zim, a lot of the banks, the correspondent banks in the US have just gone, we don't care how good your KYC is, we don't care if HMRC is happy with it, SARB's happy with it, FCA's happy with it. We just don't want any transactions going to Zimbabwe. So a couple of years back, all of our banks in Zimbabwe, who are our partners at CPZ, Bank, etc., they were finding all of our payments to them, which get routed by the US, were just getting blocked in midair. So we had cash stuck in transit, they weren't getting it, they were trying to figure out whether they should pay our customers or not. And this has become a horrible headache, and I know a few of us and my money guys who are in the market are experiencing this. And it's a very difficult one because it's just a kind of a blanket, no, we will not get money into Zimbabwe via the majority of these correspondent banks. And it's forced us, it's been an absolute hindrance. We've had to kind of adapt to it, and we've set up our own network of orange booths across the country, and are finding alternative ways to supply them with cash. But it's extremely difficult. We managed to make it work for us, but for our competitors, for example, we know it's been a headache for them. So for the actual customer at the end of the day, I mean, competition is good, end of story. So the freer we can make it for the guys, the more easy it is for guys to get US dollars into the country, the more we can free up that market and just make sure customers can get cash back home. So that's been an absolute headache. Another one that we had, which I'm sure the majority of you had a while back, was when the UK banks just closed all the bank accounts for a number of MSBs, and overnight having to find alternative bank accounts. And we still have that headache now. Trying to set up bank accounts in the UK is just an absolute headache. Who knows whether Brexit will change that or not. But kind of just knee-jerk reactions, and we spoke to it earlier about like the Kenya bombings, is that there's a lot of risk associated with money transfers and money laundering, terrorist financing, etc. And a lot of the big institutions just are like, no, we're not interested, rather than kind of looking into what you can do as a company and how good your KYC is, your AML, your fraud checks, etc. And go, you know what, we will make exceptions for X, Y, and Z because you have raised the bar to that stage. And yeah, hopefully the market, the horizon does change in that, but at the moment it's definitely one of the troubles that we are experiencing, and I'm sure a number of our competitors here are also in the same boat as us.
I think we are seeing, here in Africa, we are seeing kind of two groups, I'd say. Foreign-owned banks who are very much pulling back and following the de-risking. And I would say African banks who starting to see this a bit as an opportunity. So we certainly are feeling more appetite from the likes of EcoBank, UBA, like the African, whether the headquarters is in Africa or not, the trend seems to be a little bit different. And more appetite on African banks, and definitely pullback from foreign banks.
And Kabir, I'm particularly also interested, please, you sort of mentioned you acquired a bank in France. Has that put you in a different light, or did the bank see you in a different way to the other peers?
Yeah, there's two different parts. In Africa, what we've done is like we are organized a system within the bank, and I think that's the solution to de-risk the whole thing. Like you mentioned, the distributors that we have we have 100,000 of them across Africa. They all link to a banks. They are distributors of the bank. They are not distributors of Wire. Wire plays a role like Visa, just like the transactional platform. And but the distributors are owned by the banks. So we do all the KYC, and plus the fact that we are doing several services as bill payment, electricity, water, salary, etc., tax, for housing, taxes, etc. So we are capable of triangulating circularization of the people, and then we have a stronger KYC of people. That's what we bring into the banks, so it makes them more comfortable. And at the end of the day, they have just one batch, and they do the regular settlement, like inter-bank settlement, regular settlement. So it's easy for bank because we have put ourselves within their own organization. So it's easy for them to understand and to agree with that. And like he's saying, and they have more appetite because they're making more of their revenue with companies like Wire, etc. In Europe it's different, and you remember we were mentioning 2 years ago in London when banking was starting closing the account. That's why we acquired a bank in France, and we have a cooperation in 27 countries, and FSA in the US or in UK, sorry. So to enable our service to operate within Europe and US, and also all different partners around in this room and out there, to have a switch, like a banking switch, where we can do the settlement for them, so to solve that problem. Because in In Europe, the problem is slightly different. But again, in order to de-risk our economy, our business, is to not play on the parallel mode. We have to embed ourselves within an existing system. And yes, we have to be innovative, but we have to be understandable and comprehensive, like the gentleman was saying, to talk, to explain what we're doing, why we are innovating, how we are innovating, and what are we bringing as a value to the system, and where the old mom and pop banks, where they can get more revenue out of new economy. That's I think how we can solve the de-risking thing, because there's not much risk if it's done properly. It's more like a perception. Like you were saying, the NPL in Africa is lower than you have in Europe. We do loans, etc., and we have an NPL of 0.07%. Can you imagine? And in the other side, you have 1, 2, 3, 4% NPL, non-performing loans. So it's more about explaining, organizing properly, embedding ourselves within the existing system, being visible by the regulators and the central bank, explain what we're doing, and I think it will be much easier for us to move forward and expand our business.
We have a... So are you going to carry on with de-risking, otherwise, or you have a separate... I want to make just one other point, and can we give the mic to Veronica while it's coming to you? So I think to the gentleman who asked the question earlier, just to give you my perspective, because we do spend a lot of time on de-risking, it is a problem, it hasn't gone away. I think the regulators have taken the view that because when it happened, it seemed like 3, 4, 5 years ago, whenever Barclays closed down 200 plus accounts, there was a lot of noise. And the reason there was a lot of focus was that everybody, and you heard about the Somalia case and so on, everybody was worried that the corridor is going to get shut down and money is not going to flow. So the fact that money is still flowing, everybody's taken the view that, well, actually, it's not really that big a problem, which is just complete crap. It is a huge problem. It's just people have given up and stopped making it such a big issue and talking about it and finding alternatives to sort of work around it. And a lot of the time, the alternatives are actually having a counter impact to what the people were originally trying to do, which is now you've got cash flying, physical cash being shipped from one place to the other. You've got movement of funds from formal to informal. And we've got organizations coming up with these sustainable development goals of reducing pricing to 3%, which is a whole separate topic we can talk about. But these kinds of issues are actually going to go the other way. Taking competition out is not going to decrease prices, it's going to increase prices. On a positive side, first of all, there's no magic bullet. Unfortunately, there's no solution, otherwise somebody would have found it. On a positive side, a lot of the stakeholders recognize this as a problem. There's a continuous dialogue. I know it doesn't help anybody in this room who's actually lost an account because you'd like a solution now, but everybody recognizes that there is a lot of dialogue going on. And, earlier I think somebody asked a question, would consolidation help with this? I can tell you that nobody, including Western Union, has been immune from de-risking. It's just various level of pains that people face. So they've got a number of solutions. So if one goes away, they plug another one in. But everybody's been impacted one way or the other. And the challenges, to what Dari was saying, the elephant in the room is the US banks. That is where it's all coming from. Your local banks are fine, but it's the US clearing banks will tell your local banks, if you put any money transfer flows through me, I'm shutting down your correspondent banking arrangements. Then you come into a perception and a risk-reward issue, which is they just don't make enough money from this industry. You don't hold, it's a negative flow balance. You don't hold millions of dollars with your bank. If you did, trust me, they'd find a solution for you. And that's the challenge that we have right now. But we're doing a lot on this issue, and it's important, please, any specifics that you can feed will just help IMTN to go back, because we're constantly faced by the stakeholders saying, yeah, but give us examples. Tell us who is it. Tell us who shut the account. Give us data. And then we can go to, which I know is not very easy. You may not want to give exact names of banks and so on, but you can tell us in confidence, and we will summarize it. We won't say XYZ company said against this bank or whatever. So anyway, Veronica, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think you basically said almost what I want to say. But one of the things that I want to say is, as you might know, IMTN has been working on this standard. We presented this standard this year to the G20. So it's one of the recommendations. There are 10 recommendations for the G20 regarding finding a solution for the de-risking issue. 2 weeks ago, we were in London. We were working on this report. We have to submit how are we working and what's been happening in June to the G20. One of the key things we've been talking is, we keep on talking about bank de-risking. Since 2011 in IMTN, we've been hearing about bank de-risking in different corridors. Bank de-risking has been getting worse and has been taking different shapes. Now it's not just the money transfer that lose the accounts, but it's also the customers that have been threatened in some areas and regions. Sometimes it's providers that has been asked, and in some cases it has been employees. Why do you have in your bank account X money transfer company? And oh, sorry. Anyway, I can speak loud. And so it has been taking many different shapes. We have regions, not just countries. Regions like Scandinavia, that's been really a challenge to work with banks. So, but we always talk and talk and talk. And we propose a solution, and it seems like the public sector is really willing to pay a lot of researchers to have research, lovely research to read, but we don't go further than that. So one of the things I think we need to talk, and I would like to have ideas from the private sector now. Who would be the right stakeholder? Because we've been in contact with the banks. To be honest, there are 8 banks in the world that monopolize the clearing system now at the moment, the US dollar clearing. So we are in contact with them already. But who else? We are in contact with the US Treasury. So who else? Any idea? That's what we need now. Now we arrived to the G20, we have the standards, and we need to move forward. And we need to engage the private sector on this. Because if we don't have the engagement of the private sector, it doesn't matter how beautiful the standards are. It doesn't matter how nice they look and how the private sector and the World Bank says, yes, it's a good idea, but if we don't have the policymakers there, I think it won't work. So what I'm asking is ideas. Anything that anyone has to say, please bring it to. I knew you would have something to say.
Again, so just shortly, I mean, perception is reason. They're talking to the US government, etc., is not a solution. We need to come up with a practical solution. KYC house. Every one of you, every one of us should plug its KYC data center to a common platform. That's the first step. That will give confidence to the regulator. If they see that it's transparency, if they see that we are aggregating our force to make sure that we make the whole industry transparent, you will see a difference the way they perceive us.
I agree with that, but I think there are some companies that have even better compliance than some of the banks. So we are there. With the standards, we propose already that. We propose that the standards are not going to be only KYC, because with all these discussions we found out it's not just AML the issue. It's also governance. They want to have a few audit of the companies, the banks, in order to consider. Okay, fine, if we do it, why still we're not there? What else is missing?
Okay, I think as they say, take it outside the room. You know, no, but it's important. But I do want to bring other people in, and this is we could have a whole conference around de-risking, but it's such an important topic. So, the gentleman over there.
Thank you. My name is Andrew. So on the 8th of March, Thomson Reuters, I think FCA made a publication that says that they're going to start working with banks to help them so they stop de-risking. So I don't know if you were aware of that, but that's good news to the industry. So we should look out for that. The second thing is, obviously Marie mentioned that they have a bank in Europe. That's not my place to say it. Western Union has a bank in Germany. Maybe from an innovative perspective, we need to look at new market models where these MTOs with banks should become clearing houses for MTOs. That possibly could be another business model as we scale up. That's my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah, and I think there are people, so there's BFC Bank, for example, in the UK that's been set up specifically to focus on this, and other banks. I think the challenge you get into still is when you get into US clearing, you know, you don't have access to that. You still have to go through the correspondent banking network, which creates a problem. But yeah, that could be, at least to give credibility, as you said, perception and so on. There was a question, I think, we've covered it? No, you had a question, right?
I was going to take you another topic.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, no, we'll move off de-risking for now.
So, you know, what I was wondering, so I'm founder and CEO of Sochitel, and it's airtime and digital services supply platform. But what I was wondering from the panel is really, with the recent news that Apple is getting into the financial industry, do you see OEMs in mobile money as an opportunity or threat?
Dara, you want to kick us off?
I think it goes back to what I said, you know, if you are Apple and you're in the US and you're launching a product, you assume money is digital. In Africa, it's not true. You need the cash-in, cash-out network before anything starts. So I think, at least that's my perspective, is that it will add to the ecosystem of things that are possible through the agent network. But I don't see those OTT going all the way to deploy agent network all the way. And this is just not in Africa. Everywhere where agent network is impossible, it's working, you know, I see it operating on top of that. Whether that agent network is operated by a mobile network or people like Wari or operated by independent mobile money, it doesn't really matter. But you need that first digitalization of the cash before all these things are possible.
Anybody wants to? No? Okay. Time for Natasha.
Hello, my name is Natasha. I'm representing Small World in here. Just would like to ask our question on KYC in Africa, because this is one of suggestions, like we were told from Larry, that it actually important to have one database where information will be shared and transparent to everyone. But reality was slightly different, or this is what we are experiencing right now, that documents that are collected from customers and agents, primarily who are collecting this document, do not have facilities in majority of cases. It might be no scanners, it might be no other things that make their life easier. So how you are working with this, and what you are exactly doing to improve the situation? Because, for instance, when we are sending money from Europe or from US, for us, our KYC part, it's not optional right now, it's mandatory. So the same we're expecting from the beneficiaries who are receiving money. So can you just comment on it, please?
On the receiving side, the KYC is mandatory as well. It's mandatory by every single central bank. So the problem that we have in Africa is the fact that the IDs are in some countries, in some places, not relevant. You can just have 2, 3 IDs, etc. So that's a problem, which is a different problem. But that's why now we're talking about US dollar, etc. But the solution is like, that's why we are now moving to cryptocurrency. Because you have you're starting to have a traceability from inception. And whoever touches the money is traceable. So that's one thing. But Once the money goes outside the digital system of Wari and that's starting to be cashed out, then you lose track of it. So that's why I'm saying the challenge is more to try to aggregate all our database and to control all our strategic or economic information all together, and that will solve the problem. Today, why you have a problem of the KYC and a problem of risk, etc., or the perception, is because once you start a transaction, the other part of the transaction gets out of the system, goes into cash, hands to hands, and then you lose track of it. So now, the whole challenge is to digitalize the whole economies, like you have in Europe. You have the same in Africa, you have it in Kenya, so it means that it can be replicable everywhere else. We're doing it in Senegal, we're doing it in other countries where we're also dominant, but without that it would be impossible to solve the problem, because if people have 2, 3 ID, or sometimes they don't even have ID, it's difficult to solve this problem.
Just to talk to your point, Natasha, so yeah, we contact scanners every time we wanted to onboard a customer. We've got 1,000+ agents who are in the community going around sounding guys for us. And the way that we've got around is issue your mobile phone. We've got a software app, and the guys have to put in certain criteria on their forms, take a photo of ID, proof of address, etc., and then that gets uploaded to our compliance team. They go through their checks there. The KYC in this country in the South African Reserve Bank probably is on more strict than it should be. I think a lot of us would adopt more of the risk-based approach, and that's something that we are in talks with them for. But yeah, I think the KYC element, to the earlier point there, in terms of sharing that information, kind of showing the regulators or the banks the level of information that we take from our customers, in principle, I think we'd have to be behind it. I think you start running into sort of regulatory headaches like POPI, which is with the Personal Information Act, GDPR, all of those kind of ones now where I've taken customers' details and so going to Zimbabwe National, but it's not getting stored in Ireland on Amazon Web Services, anyone can access it. I mean, those kind of become the reality of where it gets more tricky. That said, we're very keen to figure out ways as a collective to show the banks and whoever else we need to convince that this is the level of compliance we have, these are the checks that we do, and if that's a shared one, 100% behind that kind of incentive initiative.
Thank you. Actually, so I was actually going to comment on GDPR. I think one of the limitations today is the GDPR element, which all of a sudden makes it almost impossible or difficult for you to collaborate on data sharing. The other thing is, just to answer Natasha, about 90% of the mobile network operators or the wallet providers in this part of the world actually do full KYC, just because it's become regulatory. Case in point, MTN in Nigeria, the fine, not too long ago, Uganda, we had a Kenya story. So everybody actually does take some form of KYC. Minimum, let's say their passport or some form of national ID. In some markets, we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 will say, okay, you can provide a minimum of maybe a health insurance ID. Tier 2, must be passport, etc., etc. So there is definitely full KYC. The biggest challenge is most networks will not release that KYC validation purposes because they are worried about fraud. And of course, in recent times, not understanding the GDPR requirements even makes it more difficult. So a lot of times they'll do the verification, but they'll not come back with a match and say, these two names match, for example. So these are some of the limitations. As unfortunate central bankers are not here, but maybe you can take into AFI. And one of the things that, I think the time has come for a convergence between AFI, the likes of yourselves, and other bodies, so that we start fusing all the different challenges that the players have. But otherwise, there is full KYC.
Thank you. I'm going to take one last comment or question from Dia.
Hello, my name is Diana. I'm the Chief Strategy and Products Officer at EastNet. I'm based in Amman, Jordan. We have an initiative in Jordan that we're working on it now with a private entity which is fully owned by Central Bank and all the banks in Jordan. And this initiative is actually to build a KYC registry over blockchain. And the thing is, it's very simple. They're doing it over a mobile app where you just send your information asking to register to this KYC registry, and you just push the information. It goes to the civil affair, they verify that all the information is correct. You send an image or a screenshot of your a picture by mobile for your identity, and you send it. They verify and they give you the okay. Then they send it over screening and all the verification and everything. It's just like a first line defense for any sanctions or blacklisted entities. Once the information is available, it's your choice as a customer to pull this to push this information to any of the banks that you're willing to open an account with. So I'm wondering why we cannot apply the same exercise or practice for mobile wallets, regardless who's owning this mobile wallets, the mobile operators, private companies. So why can't we do this if we have the ability or actually the agreement upon all operators to do such things? Is there a reason that stops us from doing this in certain regions, like regulations or other things?
Well, certainly in Europe, as he touched on, you've got GDPR, which is an issue, but I don't know in Africa
We're starting that thing to do the KYC with the blockchain, and because they give more security in identifying people. The challenge we're having, and now it just came from the CEO forum. I was discussing with the president of DRC, the new one, because it's where DRC is a huge problem with identification of people. What we're trying to do now is we do it in 17 countries where we have a direct link with the Ministry of Interior. So as soon as you come to us with an ID, we scan an ID with the phone, anything, we are capable of reading the MRZ, and then we send that thing to the ministry to check on the database if it's a real ID, and if it's your ID, blah, 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 it matches, etc. But now, once we have that, we create a profile with the blockchain that will follow you everywhere. If you pay your electricity bill, we will tag it to your electricity bill, etc., etc. We're starting in several countries, but the challenge is that the Ministry of Interior, the one that holds the ID database, are not really reluctant to give us direct access to the thing. And we are trying to have sponsors like other public sponsors to help us talk to those institutions for them to give us access to it. If we have access to those databases, then I think the whole thing will be solved. And then we add it to the blockchain, and I think it will be the perfect match.
We're going to bring it to close, but actually, very interestingly, GDPR actually contradicts in terms of the blockchain technology, because GDPR gives you the right as a consumer to be forgotten. But if your record's on blockchain, you cannot be forgotten. So there's a real, I mean, they came out with GDPR, of course, typically as regulators do, without knowing what blockchain technology does. So it's a challenge. But this sets us very nicely, because in the next session, we're going to have EastNet and eKYC presentation. So meanwhile, ladies and